Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello everyone, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to discuss about North-South divide. We will be discussing its four main components, and these are its concept, history, challenges, and the future of North-South divide. Regarding to that introduction picture that is on the screen right now, the countries in the blue color are representing global north, and the countries representing in red color are of global south. We will further discuss that north-south divide in the upcoming slides. Let's move on. Let's start with the history. The north-south divide is basically a division on the basis of socio-economic and political status of any state. And this idea of north-south division was popularized in late 20th century and early 21st century. The idea of categorizing the countries began in the Cold War era, when there was a classification of world on the basis of two blocks, East and West. East contained the USSR, China, while the West bloc contained the USA and its allies. Branded line is a visual depiction of North-South division. Well, Willy Brandt was a West German former chancellor in the 1980s. He encircled the world in the North-South division. We will see that branded line in the next slide. So that's the branded line. It is dividing the North America from Central and Latin America. Then it moves on to the Europe, divides Europe and Africa. Then it moves on towards Russia, excluding China. Then it dips down towards Australia and New Zealand, including them in the global north. Well, according to this picture, the blue countries are basically the first world countries, and the country with the stripes is the second world country, and the country with the other are third world countries. And there are also variable countries like Mongolia, and I think there is Bangladesh and Myanmar here. So that's the division of global north and south division. Now, for understanding the division of global north and south, we also have to understand the concept of third world. The idea of third world originated in 1952 from the article of Alfred Sauvé. In the early definitions, what the third world really meant was that the countries that are not in the bloc of either the East or the Western bloc. So they were basically the non-aligned countries, and they were mostly ex-colonial states or the nations, poor nations. The efforts to mobilize the third world as an autonomous political entity were undertaken. Following this, the first non-aligned summit was organized in 1961, and the states that were in the front line of non-aligned movement were India and the former Yugoslavia. These were the most prominent states in that, and I think Venezuela was also in it. Let's move on. So what's the divisional basis of the North-South division? Well, the North implies a development and the South implies a lack thereof. North becomes synonymous with the economic development and industrialization, while South represents previously colonized countries which are in need of help in the form of international aid and agendas. What is economic development? Well, the definition of economic development is the advancement in technologies and the transition of an economy from the agricultural base to an industry and an improvement in the living standards. So that's the divisional basis of a North-South division. So what includes North and South? The global North includes the G8 countries, as we know, United States, Canada, the European Union states, Israel, Japan, Singapore, South Korea, Australia and New Zealand are the 4 of the 5 permanent states, excluding China. The global south includes the prominent states are in Asia are Middle East is the home of BRIC. Excluding Russia, all the prominent states of BRICS are in the global south. Now let's move on to discuss the challenges that the North-South division is facing. In my opinion, these are the 3 most prominent challenges that the North-South division is facing. The first one is of differences. Differences in what? Differences in the political, economic and demographic makeup of the countries comprising the global south. As we know, the northern states treat the global south as a monolithic south, but there are significant differences between the different states. The second challenge that the North-South divide is facing is of globalization. Globalization has also challenged the notion of 2 distinct economic spheres. As we know, the countries that are growing with the passage of time, the difference between the North and South is shrinking. Following the liberalization of post-Mao China, initiated in 1978, growing regional cooperation between the national economies of Asia has led to the growing decentralization of North as the main economic power. That's what this paragraph is explaining about, that what I said, that the differences between the North and the South is shrinking. And the third is a recent growth. Bottom 16 nations of the global South were thought to be gaining on North in terms of income diversification, participation in the world market. These are the 3 most important challenges to the North-South divide. Let's move on to the future of North-South division. Well, economists have argued that international free trade and unhindered capital flows across countries could lead to a contraction in the North-South divide. That's what the future of North-South division is, according to economists. As some countries in the South experienced rapid development, there is evidence that those states are developing high levels of South-South trade. So there is interconnection between the southern states, and they are growing with each other, like Bangladesh, Malaysia and the Asian tigers, India, etc. move towards equality, and there is a move towards equality. The differences are shrinking. So in the future, there will be no North-South division, as it can be highlighted from the United Nations new Millennium Development Goals, of which were to be achieved by 2050, and the Millennium Development Goals were of eradication of poverty, hunger, HIV/AIDS. So there is a move towards equality. So that was the future of North-South division. Thank you very much.